magnets go a lot further, or electromagnetic or electrostatic force goes way further in explaining, you know, this idea of gravity than anything else. And it's not even that it has anything to do with you know, gravity as we're taught it. Basically, the buoyancy and density argument works very well, but you know, like I've said many times before, there is still something that determines up from down. And you know, as I believe and many other physicists believe, you know, not the least of which would be Wal Thornhill of the Thunderbolts project, that it is a static dipole effect that is essentially that potential of up from down is set by the natural electrostatic charge of the Earth plane itself. And you know, commensurate with that, you know, if the Earth is indeed some sort of an electric circuit, then the anode, you know, the cathode would be the Earth, and we know that the Earth has this static field, you know, even by mainstream physics, that is measured at 100 volts per meter, going up to at least 50 kilometers, right? Which gives us a minimum static potential, or average, of 5 million volts.
Much of the following explanation is adapted from Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman's lecture on physics, a section called Electricity in the Atmosphere. For every meter you go up in the air, the voltage increases by around 100 volts, or we could say around 100 volts per yard. We can draw these voltage increases using what are called equipotential lines. Notice that the ground is negative and the sky is positive with respect to each other. According to Feynman, this extends upward to 50 kilometers, or 31 miles, where the air is very conductive.
It goes up 50 kilometers, according to Richard Feynman, or 31 miles. And at 100 volts per meter, that leaves us with a static potential in the air between the Earth ground and 31 miles up of 5 million volts. Okay, that's not that's not a small figure, believe me. 5 million volts is a lot of energy, a lot of voltage. Now, the thing about this static electricity is, even though it's extremely high in voltage, it's very, very low in current. So fortunately, when you're down at the lower levels and you go up on a tower and you're only experiencing, you know, a few thousand volts of that static electricity, because of the fact that the current is very low, it won't kill you. However, it does hurt, you know, as I've said many times. So here we have Richard Feynman, which is talking about this electrostatic field, which is emanating from the Earth, and essentially acting as a cathode. Now, if you have a cathode, that must mean that you have some sort of an anode to complete the electrical circuit of the Earth. And of course, that anode would speculatively be the firmament, if you will, or, you know, if it's even physically up there. Otherwise, I'm not sure, because typically you have to have something to complete a circuit before you get any type of current flow. But the bottom line is that it is documented in mainstream physics by Richard Feynman that we have got this electrostatic potential, this fantastic electrostatic potential that's coming off the Earth to the tune of 5 million volts up. Well, so let's think about that for a second. What did Ken Wheeler just say?
Gravity is nothing other than dielectricity. Gravity is no different than turning on your TV set and actually shining a light off from the side and you seeing little dust particles actually head to the TV set and stick to the TV set. That's why you're running your TV set, especially little CRT tubes, got so dusty. The dust in the air would go gravitate to the front of the That is the exact same thing as gravity. People think that that is an electrostatic charge, or like you charge a balloon up and you pull someone's hair to it. That same acceleration, not force, that same acceleration is what we ignorantly call gravity.
He said, well, if you've ever looked at an old CRT, you know, your old television set, and you shine a light on it and you can see all these little dust particulates, you know, being drawn towards this CRT, that is exactly what the effect of gravity is. And it's like, wow. That's what struck me as so strong, because we have that static electric potential off of the front of that CRT, which draws everything to it, and it doesn't seem to care what it is. And lo and behold, we have that exact same condition, except with a much, much higher static potential on the Earth itself, documented by mainstream physics and even broken down to 100 volts per meter. So what does that tell us? That tells us that, wow, it doesn't take a great leap of faith or logic to then see that what Wal Thornhill was talking about the static dipole effect attracting everything to it, that it is indeed the Earth itself that sets the potential that determines up from down. And of course, any of you that have been following Globebusters for a while knows that my position on gravity has always been that, yes, I totally believe in the density and buoyancy argument. However, since day one, I have said there is still something that is determining up from down. Okay, and this is it. This is actually it. It's the static potential between the ground and the sky itself, proving unequivocally that gravity is an electrostatic force, which of course is all part of the electromagnetic circuit that we've talked about on Globebusters for several weeks here. You know, it's so funny. You can have something right in front of your face and yet for some reason not see it. And Jaron, how many times have I talked about, you know, me being up on a tower and getting the crap knocked out of me by static electricity? And it never occurred to me. It's like, oh my God, here it is. The entire Earth is the static thing. Now, obviously, as weather fronts move in and out, conductivity of atmosphere changes, that potential will rise and fall, and you will have dips in that potential when there is a static discharge of lightning, or you have sprites or elves that are discharging up and hitting something up there that would, you know, likely be akin to a firmament. And again, this is something that, at least in the flat Earth model, with some sort of covering or dome, whether it's a dome or whether it's just a continuous plane of something, there is something up there that is giving us a charge potential between the Earth itself and you know, whatever is up there, you know, above us, firmament or not. Okay, that at least makes sense in so many ways that you know, where the ball Earth model just completely fails. So again, we can demonstrate this charge potential all day long. You know, static electricity, there's virtually nothing that it does not have an effect on. What he's doing is he's simply going to make the point that you know, several things are electrostatically attracted, and it doesn't matter if they're metallic, it doesn't matter if they're wood, it doesn't matter if they're plastic. Electrostatics seems to have this exact same effect on everything. Here he's got a charged straw and it's being attracted either way to his hand. Okay, so he's showing that. Then he's going to come up and he's going to put a straw in here again, and he's going to bring other objects in the vicinity of it. Now we've got a metallic object. I think he's got a fork there or a knife, something like that, and it's being attracted to it. So it doesn't matter if it's biological material like us, or dust, which would be dirt, or now he's going to use glass, or I think that's a plastic bottle, or maybe it's glass, I'm not sure. But he uses glass, and he uses all these different materials. Here we've got wood. Wood is attracted to it. So it's the electrostatic force, really, and even a thing of garlic salt, that he's making this point about, okay? So obviously the point here is that electrostatic energy can be very attractive or it can be repulsive, but in our context in gravity, obviously we're using it as an attractive force. Now he also will take other objects, you know, like this knife, and he'll reverse it by taking the knife and putting it up there, and then he is, what's he doing here? Oh, then he's putting a plastic piece next to it, and we've got, again, this attractive force again. So long story short, electrostatics very definitely seems to attract everything. There's very few things, if any, really, that it doesn't have an effect on. It has an effect on wood, plastic, paper, biological material, everything. And why does it? Because everything is made up of these little charged particles, whether or not you want to accept that they are actually atomic structures, you know, with a nucleus being made of protons and neutrons and orbiting electrons, whether you want to look at it that way or not. The bottom line is that everything still has a charge, and it is this charge potential that is giving us our up from down in this model. After that potential is set, sets this framework, then the buoyancy and density argument takes over. And again, this is 100% demonstrable in a lab, whereas gravity is not. So really, who's got the better theory here, right? And not only that, when you look at what mainstream science has done with gravity, you know, we're taking this 9.8 meters per second squared gravitational constant that, you know, we are measuring on Earth as an acceleration, by the way, not a force, but an acceleration. And we are trying to apply it to everything that we're observing in the rest of the universe. Well, guess what? That doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Well, because obviously we really don't know what these quote unquote gravitational parameters are out in the cosmos. And in fact, when you apply these same gravitational parameters that we're observing here on Earth to the rest of the cosmos, it doesn't work. So what do they have to do in that case? Well, then they have to invent dark matter, right? And all these other, you know, strange phenomenons that once again we can prove none of in order to bolster their theory. Where once again, you know, when it comes back to the simple electric universe model, and I mean in the flat electric universe model, not necessarily the one that the Thunderbolts promotes, which is far more accurate and far more plausible even than the mainstream heliocentric model. But when you get back to, you know, what we're describing about the Earth having a cathode and anode and a static charge in between it, and you know, we can measure the static potential at 100 volts per meter on average all the way up, you know, at least we've got a demonstrable model, you know, in that particular area instead of a bunch of wild speculation, right?
Yeah, yeah. Density and buoyancy works, you know, to a degree to explain what goes up must come down. In normal cases, if you're discussing this with someone, they're going to tell you, well, you still need gravity in order for density and buoyancy to work. And that's not true. You merely need a tendency for higher density objects to naturally find a place at rest towards the ground. And yeah, I totally agree with you that it's the static electric charge of the Earth itself that gives it that nudge, and that's really all you need is a nudge. And I believe that's why they call gravity such a very weak force, because it doesn't really even in their model, it doesn't cause apples to fall from trees. That's really handed more towards the density and buoyancy as well. Gravity is merely that nudge for you know, where high density and low density objects find their place of rest naturally. Yes. And so, yeah, it really does explain it very well.
And the electrostatic force is a very weak force, right? The electrostatic attraction is very weak. We know that. You know, you can rub a balloon on your hair and you can put it next to a water stream and it will draw it over to it. But again, that's only in very close proximity. But in the grand scheme of things, electrostatic force is very, very weak. And again, that's the only thing that is required to tip the scales, so to speak, pardon the pun, in being able to give us what is actually up from down. And from that point forward, density and buoyancy absolutely explain everything. You know, from liquids, gases, everything follows this exact same parameters. And again, so even when you get into the idea, well, what about a hydrogen or helium balloon? Why does it float up? Well, look at the atomic structure of hydrogen and helium, right? And this goes back again into the dielectric theory that Walt Thornhill and many other physicists have proposed as being the actual cause of what we're perceiving as gravity. That makes so much more sense, and it's so much more demonstrable. It is demonstrable in a lab. Gravity is not, unless you're Neil deGrasse Tyson and you take a microphone and drop it on the floor and go, gravity, bitches. And that's about the best they can do. Sorry, not good enough.